I've lived long enough to know what society expects from women like me: graceful aging, quiet dignity, no surprises. But that day, under the stares of friends, strangers, and a world that never saw it coming, I kissed her. Yes, her. Half my age, eyes full of fire, and a heart that reminded me what it meant to feel alive. They called it reckless. I call it the most honest moment of my life. I wasn't looking for anyone. Not at my age. Not after the divorce. Not after years of pretending the mirror didn't reflect a woman who still longed to be seen. Not as a mother, a boss, or a ticking clock, but as a human being, raw and alive. It was a gallery opening, one of those pretentious downtown events where everyone pretends to understand abstract art while sipping bitter wine. I almost didn't go. My friend Linda had begged me to get out of the house. "Come on, Karen, just wear something black and mysterious. No one has to know you're the oldest person in the room." I had rolled my eyes, but I went. That's where I saw her. She stood near a piece that looked like someone had thrown blue paint at a window. But she wasn't looking at the art. She was looking through it, lost in her thoughts. She couldn't have been more than 25. Leather jacket, wild curls, eyes that held stories I hadn't lived, but wanted to hear. Our eyes met for 1 second too long. I smiled politely and turned away, my heart betraying me with a thud I hadn't felt in years. I told myself to forget it. I hovered by the snack table, nibbling on stale crackers and pretending to admire a sculpture made of broken glass and bones. That's when she approached me. "You don't actually like that, do you?" she said, smirking. Her voice was bold, amused. I chuckled. "I'm trying to decide if it's art or a health hazard." She laughed, and it was rich, young, but not naive. "Same. I think it's pretending to be dangerous." There was a pause, a silence full of recognition. She looked at me, really looked at me, like she wasn't afraid to see beyond the years and the wrinkles and the practiced composure. And I, in return, saw her youth not as a wall, but as a question. What if? We walked through the exhibit together. Her name was Emily. She was a photography student, passionate, blunt, beautiful in a way that wasn't obvious, like her soul had scars and poetry. I forgot about the people watching us. I forgot I was nearly twice her age. For once, I wasn't a woman hiding from time. I was present. When the night ended, she asked if I wanted to grab a drink. I hesitated. I thought of all the reasons to say no. The gossip, the difference in years, my grown daughter who already judged me for wearing heels. But I said yes. We sat in a dimly lit bar, jazz humming in the background, and I listened to her speak like no one had silenced her yet. She asked about my life, and I told her more than I should have. And then, as she leaned closer, her hand brushed mine. I didn't pull away. That night, I went home with my lips untouched, but my world shaking. I lay awake, wondering what had just begun, because sometimes the first glance is all it takes to remember you're still alive. The next morning, I stood in front of my wardrobe for longer than I care to admit. It wasn't a date. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. Just coffee, just conversation, just curiosity. But the blouse I chose dipped slightly lower than usual, and I wore perfume for the first time in months. Emily had sent a message before I even woke up. Yesterday felt like the beginning of something. Can I see you again? I stared at the screen like it might bite me. My finger hovered over the keyboard. I typed, deleted, retyped. Then I simply answered, yes. She suggested a cafe tucked away on a quiet street. It was the kind of place with mismatched furniture and chalkboard menus where everyone looked like they were writing novels or falling in love. When I walked in, she was already there, waving at me with that same disarming grin. Karen, she said, like my name was something she'd tasted before and wanted more of. I didn't think you'd actually come. Neither did I replied, sitting across from her, hoping she didn't notice the way my hands trembled. We talked for hours. I told her about my life, about the long marriage that felt like a polite negotiation by the end, about my daughter who thought I was boring, about the art classes I never took because I was too busy being sensible. She listened, not the way most people do, waiting for their turn to speak, but truly listened, like each word I said added color to her canvas. Then she asked, have you ever been with a woman? The air between us went still. My heart knocked against my ribs. No, I said, not like that. But you've thought about it. It wasn't a question. I looked at her, and suddenly every buried part of me clawed its way up. The nights I'd stayed up, wondering, the glances that lingered, the books I read and reread in secret. Yes, I said softly. She leaned in. I don't want to scare you. You don't, I whispered, although I was trembling. You make me feel seen. Her hand reached across the table, brushing mine, and this time I held it. In the middle of the cafe, with strangers sipping lattes and typing away, I let her fingers intertwine with mine. That afternoon, we walked side by side through a quiet park. I found myself laughing freely, my voice lighter than it had been in years. She talked about her photography, about the way light hits skin and makes it glow. She said she wanted to take my picture. "I want to remember you like this," she said, "right before everything changes." I asked her what that meant, but she just smiled. When we parted ways, she kissed my cheek, just a whisper of a kiss, soft and fleeting, but it was the spark that lit the fuse. I felt it burn all the way down my spine. At home, I looked in the mirror. For once, I didn't see an aging woman hiding from desire. I saw a woman standing at the edge of something forbidden, something beautiful, and I wasn't backing away. I had planned to keep it secret. It was safer that way. Let the world believe I was still the woman they knew, composed, respectable, predictable, a woman who followed the rules, stayed in her lane, and never reached for the kind of love that made people whisper. But Emily was impossible to hide. Every message she sent made me smile like a teenager. Every moment with her peeled away a layer of who I thought I had to be. And the way she looked at me, like I wasn't just older, but worthy. That kind of gaze is dangerous. It dares you to believe in yourself again. 1 week after the cafe, she invited me to a party. "My friends are a little wild," she said with a teasing grin, "but they're good people. You'd like them, or at least they'll like you." I hesitated. I knew what kind of people she meant. Artists, dreamers, women with tattoos and opinions, women who wouldn't blink twice at seeing someone like her with someone like me. But I would blink, I would flinch. I'd feel the judgment, even if it never came. "I'm not sure I'll fit in," I said. "You don't have to fit in," she replied. "You just have to show up." So I did. The party was in a loft downtown, where the walls were bare brick and the air smelled like incense and wine. Music pulsed through the room, and laughter spilled out like light. Emily greeted me at the door, her hair pinned up, her dress clinging to every confident curve. "You came," she said, like I'd just made the bravest decision of my life. "Don't let me regret it," I joked, but the nerves in my stomach were real. She didn't let go of my hand once. Her friends were kind, curious, warm. No one treated me like I was an outsider. In fact, it was the opposite. They leaned in to hear me speak, laughed at my stories, asked about my favorite art and music as if I were one of them. But I still felt the edge. I still knew I was different. And then, without warning, Emily turned to me and said, "Dance with me." I froze. "Emily," she raised an eyebrow, "do you want to?" That was the real question, not if it was appropriate, not if it would raise eyebrows. Just, do you want to? I nodded. She led me to the middle of the room where no one was watching, or maybe everyone was. But it didn't matter. Her hands found my waist, and mine found her shoulders. We moved slowly, rhythmically, like the music existed only for us. Then it happened. In the middle of the dance floor, surrounded by laughter and strangers and starlight through the window, she kissed me, full, soft, certain. My breath caught, my body stiffened for a moment, and then I melted. There were gasps, a few stares, but no one pulled us apart. No one interrupted. The world didn't end. In fact, for the first time, it began. That kiss wasn't stolen, it was chosen. I chose it. I chose her. And I knew there was no going back. I didn't sleep that night, not because I regretted anything, but because everything inside me had shifted. That kiss was more than lips meeting in a moment of passion. It was a declaration, a rebellion, and a risk. The next morning, my phone buzzed with messages. Some were from Emily, sweet, teasing, excited. Still replaying last night. Your trouble, Karen, the best kind. But others were not so kind. One was from my daughter. Mom, someone sent me a photo of you kissing that girl. Please tell me it's a joke. My heart sank. I had forgotten how fast word travels when it doesn't ask permission. I called her. She didn't pick up. And then the doubts crept in. What had I done? Had I thrown away decades of reputation, of safety for a kiss? For a woman who could still walk into a club without feeling out of place? But when I looked at myself in the mirror, I didn't see a woman who had made a mistake. I saw someone who had finally told the truth. Still, I knew I couldn't avoid the fallout. At work, 2 colleagues glanced at me in the break room and quickly turned away, whispering. At yoga, someone asked casually, "So, dating anyone interesting lately?" I smiled, pretended not to understand. But the truth was too big to hide. So when Emily invited me to another event, a spoken word night at a feminist bookstore, I hesitated. "You don't have to come," she said gently, "but I'd love to see you there." I paused, and then I said the 2 words that had become a pattern lately. "I'll come." This time, when I walked in, I didn't feel like I was trespassing. I felt like I was becoming. The bookstore smelled like old pages and fresh coffee. Women of every shape and shade filled the room. Emily stood near the mic, glowing. I was hoping you'd show, she said, taking my hand. I saved you a seat, front row. She got on stage later that evening, and when she started to read, I realized the poem was about me, about a woman with silver in her hair and fire in her eyes, about fingers that hesitated, then held on like lifelines, about a kiss that rewrote the rules. I cried, not because it was embarrassing, but because for once someone saw the woman inside me and named her out loud. After the event, she didn't kiss me. Not in the bookstore, not in front of everyone. She waited until we were outside, beneath the moon, where the night air carried no judgment. She looked at me and asked, "Are you okay?" And I whispered, "No, but I think I'm getting there." Then she kissed me again, and I knew I wasn't just falling for her. I was finally standing up for myself. The following weeks tested everything. My daughter finally called. Her voice was tight, clipped, more hurt than angry. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked. I didn't have an easy answer. How could I explain that even I was still learning the shape of this new self? "I didn't want you to feel ashamed of me," I said. She paused. "I'm not ashamed. I'm just surprised and confused." So was I admitted. But confusion wasn't the enemy. Fear was. Silence was. Pretending was. "I'm still your mother," I told her, "but I'm also a woman, and I've spent too many years being quiet." She didn't say much after that, but she didn't hang up either. That was enough for now. Emily, on the other hand, never once wavered. She stood beside me with patience, humor, and an affection so steady it softened the sharp edges of my doubt. One evening, she invited me to a dinner party, her closest circle, all women, all bold, all fiercely protective of her. I almost didn't go. I imagined the looks, the questions, the unspoken. Why her? Why someone old enough to be your mother? But when I stepped through the door, they greeted me with warmth, with curiosity, yes, but not cruelty. They saw how she looked at me. They saw how I looked back. At some point during the night, one of her friends, tall, tattooed, and drinking red wine straight from the bottle, asked, "So, Karen, what did you think would happen falling for one half your age?" I smiled. "I didn't plan this," I said, "but I'm not apologizing for it either." There was silence, and then a slow clap from the woman across the table. "You're all right," she said. She chose well. After that, things changed. The world didn't stop judging, but I stopped caring. Emily and I traveled, we cooked, we argued about movies, We made love like time wasn't real. She photographed me often, in laughter, in reflection, in vulnerability. She called the collection ageless. And one night, after a small gallery show where she displayed our portraits, I stood in the center of the room, surrounded by strangers. Emily raised a glass and said, "This is Karen, the woman who taught me that courage doesn't always look like fire. It sometimes looks like quiet grace, finally saying yes." Then she walked across the floor, kissed me in front of everyone again. Only this time, I kissed her back first. No one gasped, no one stared. Some smiled, others clapped. But me, I felt weightless. Because this time, I wasn't caught off guard. I was ready, ready to live, to love, to own my story. And if the world had something to say about it, let them talk. Because the truth is, I wasn't just chosen that day. I chose myself too. Love doesn't ask for permission. It just shows up, bold and unapologetic. If this story moved you, share it, comment below, and tell us, would you have had the courage to kiss or to be kissed?